now.
Well, welcome to this special edition of our podcast with UAC and Dr. Smolyanov and Jed Smith. We've been talking fringe methodologies for a couple of weeks now. Now we're going to do something a little bit different, kind of in the middle here, as it's still kind of in the midst of the COVID-19, pandemic, lockdown, and just about now we're at the end of the first week of May, starting to get ideas on when things will reopen, the economy reopening, and that also means facilities. Actually, it was announced today that I think 4 NBA teams were reopening their practice facilities for teams to come in and individual workouts, and they're all setting protocols for how that's going to happen. Like how many people at one time, how many coaches would be in the building, are they going to take their temperature or evaluate them when they get in? Also using, different sanitary methods. I think it's still fluid. Like I don't know if everybody knows exactly what's going to happen, but the plan's in place. It's going to move. And so, Jed, you're at UNI. In Iowa there, and I know you're going through a similar situation there. They're going to reopen for you guys. So I'd like to start with you. Like, number one, during this whole process, how did COVID change what you were going to do, what you were doing at that point? And then what's kind of the idea going forward from this position here as it does reopen? We're probably looking at the next 3 weeks or so where things start to kind of change. How does that change things?
Yeah. Joseph, we had just finished up a mesocycle here of our winter training, and we were moving into they're actually going, all our student athletes were going on spring break. So we finished up on a Friday, and the kids were getting ready to go to spring break, and the announcement hit that when they came back from spring break, there was going to be no campus available for them, that they were to stay home. And so we weren't going to be able to train them. So what happened is I spent my spring break designing programming for our student athletes and developing a system with my strength coaches, so that as soon as they got back from spring break, we were going to go online and go live. They weren't going to miss a beat as far as their training was concerned. So they got back from spring break Sunday night. They would have started their training on Monday. We had a Zoom meeting with all the athletes. We had sent off via email all the programming. I actually talked with Peter a bit on this when we were laying this out. And then we started, and it was broken down into different categories. You had some kids that went out and developed their own garage gyms. In fact, equipment manufacturers made out like bandits during this time. You can't get equipment. It's insane. You can't even get on Amazon and buy a kettlebell right now, or a sandbag that's, labeled as a lifting sandbag. No barbell sets. It's very difficult to get equipment, but all of it was gobbled up. There were underground gyms created all over America. So 75% of our football athletes had access to an underground gym with full barbell sets and so forth. So how that was set up, that was a variety pack. So some kids had parents that bought equipment. And who knows? When we contacted them all, 75% of them had a full gym set up.
Wow.
And we had 25% that did. So we had to make accommodations and so forth, from body weight, strength training protocols, all the way up to what we would be doing anyways. So we started coaching them on Zoom and doing live sessions until the NCAA banned that. And that was simply because you didn't have a certified coach there in the facility. If something were to happen, if there was an injury, there was no CPR certified personnel or athletic trainer on site. So they said you couldn't have live coaching that was taking place for physical. So they continued on with the protocols that we had designed, and then we moved to just meetings, check-ins, things like that, phone calls. We worked on the mental side of things, which I think we'll get into, where I was conducting meetings on developing tactics that are in our book, fringe methodologies like mindfulness skills, to relieve anxiety, stress, for flow, self-hypnosis, visualization tactics, some of the things that we use on the psychological side within our book. I was actually doing sessions just like we're sitting here on this Zoom conference, but I do this with our athletes. So we're trying to teach them new skill sets that they could use and refine during this period so that they could advance as athletes. So all this went on until now, and now we're getting the green light is coming up. So basically we're looking at trying to reopen our campus in about 3 weeks for training. So I'm putting together a strategy, a systemized approach to reopening the facility, and then what we're going to do when we open the facility, how we're going to train the athletes safely. Been discussing this with Peter, and we've been looking over different documents that have come out, that have given examples of possible protocols and so forth, because we've really never experienced anything like this in our nation's history for sport. So with that in mind, it's new territory, and I guess that's what we're going to kind of discuss here. And there's a lot of things that we can do. So, I guess we're going to get into it.
Yeah, Dr. Smolyanov, this is kind of an interesting application, none that neither one of us expected, but an application of fringe methodologies. There's a conventional wisdom on how to handle different infectious diseases. And as you mentioned in the last podcast, something like traditional Chinese medicine is fringe here in the United States, but in other countries, it is, the normal standard procedure that they might use. So I know that there's distinctions between the way that the U.S. will handle this or is handling this in allopathic medicine. So I'd like to start at the top there, like from the nutritional end and things on that end of things. And please, you feel free to fill in all the gaps. But I know that things like adaptogenics can be very helpful. Also, on the nutritional side with food, and this doesn't get talked about in typical conventional wisdom, in the United States. Could you kind of expound on that in any way you'd like?
Yeah. So Jed gave a very good summary of how this situation was handled by some of the most advanced programs in the United States, sport programs at universities. Perhaps the professional leagues handle this in a similar way, and with similar lockdown for a while still. Best practices in the world that we must now investigate are those national squads that never stop training. If you look at what Chinese and South Koreans in particular, who handled the coronavirus pandemic quite well compared to other countries in general, their pentathlete, for example, never stopped. They had very strict, very very advanced conditions for preventing spread of the disease, but they trained through this. And Chinese swimmers as well. We need to look at some of the best practices and countries who were prepared for this. There is a lot of finger pointing now for what's going on, for all the mess that we have, and for all the for the number of people who are dead. I think this is indicative of our laziness, our unwillingness to listen to visionaries like Bill Gates here in the United States, who described in detail what was going to happen. And he called us for preparation. We never put enough effort and resources into preparing carefully, just like national squads are preparing for Olympic Games, and they prepare for emergency situations like this in detail, just like countries who experienced military, who are in the stress of war action constantly, like Israel, how well they handled it. They closed on time. They had a very strict, very disciplined approach to handling the situation and having minimum number of deaths, and then opening up. They're opened up now. They operate fully. How Austrians did it. We need to look at how Austria did it and why they're all opened now. But I think that our main lesson is that we need to prepare for the next epidemic and pandemic like this now, both for an epidemic that is biological, just like this one, but also cyber attacks, because what we see here is that we moved online. This pandemic forced us to learn and utilize much more advanced communication technologies, which is very, very positive. And that's an example of how stressful situations like wars and competitive games like Olympic Games push us to advance. We advanced. Now we advanced to the point that we cannot live without Zoom anymore.
Right.
So, but the next crisis is going to be online. It's going to be a cyber attack, not bio attack.
Or a combination of a pandemic. Or a combination, Peter, of a pandemic followed by a cyber attack.
Absolutely, yes. And or another biological warfare is gonna be bigger than what we have experienced now. So we must be preparing now based on all the mistakes we've made, and based on what best practice countries demonstrated to us. And I named a number of countries, but there is probably another dozen of national squads across the world who never stopped, who were prepared for this, who trained through this, who now are so much ahead of the rest of the world in their physical, mental preparation for the next Olympic Games that are delayed, that they have much higher chance of winning gold medals. I could name China and South Korea for sure. See how they perform, and let's compare their swimmers, their endurance athletes in particular, at the next Olympics, and see if the fact that they never stopped training gave them the real advantage. See how they perform, whether they show real.
Did Russia continue to train, Peter?
I cannot say this, but I say that quite a lot of squads were closed as they were closed, as they were locked down here. Russia didn't do as well as, say, South Korea did, but many competitions are already going on now. I mean, they closed too late, just as the United States did. They didn't close early enough. But they started to prepare earlier. They started to prepare medically in advance, perhaps better. But they're opening now, and they have competitions taking place. So that's the organizational, I think, aspect. In terms of micro level, I think we need to cut through a lot of unnecessary and useless information that's in the media. And if we want to focus on this current pandemic, in the center of it is the lung. Lungs is the most important organ that must be taken care of, must be strengthened and ventilated in order to minimize the risk of COVID-19 spreading and dying from it. If you have strong lungs, if your overall body is supporting strong lung system, you have minimal chance of having symptoms, and even though you might carry the virus, you will be fine. So I think this is the most important point for us to understand when we are now opening up and when we are trying to minimize the risk for our athletes and all participants in our sport facilities. So there's quite a lot of very interesting research that's coming out of for high performance sport that can be shared with mass participants. For example, when you run, sometimes it's better run shoulder to shoulder. If you run in a squat, because when you run behind, even if it's 2 meters or 6 feet, what the front person exhales if there is no wind, this is what the person behind inhales. So this the coach must take care of the ventilation and fresh air very carefully to make sure that there is a constant flow of air, constant movement of air, and it is maximized to ventilate the environment and the lungs of participants.
You know, and I'll add a little something here. We talked about, Peter and I talked about yesterday, actually, Joseph. So when we open up our strength and conditioning center, you know, having the physical distancing is important, but then really because it is a disorder of the lungs, and we need to move particles out of the air. If it's not properly ventilated, the facility, those particles are gonna stay within the air, and even though you have physical distancing, in most facilities there isn't very good airflow. So what we're gonna do at UNI is and we can get these on campus because we have them in our facilities, but they're those 6-foot barn fans, Joseph, where you know they're the big barn fans are on the wheels. We can roll in. We'll put them in every single door. We'll have from the hallway, we'll open up the doors to the building, and we'll pump in because those fans can throw out a lot of air. And then I'll have them going out the other doors, so there'll be constant airflow, massive airflow. So it'll be wind just going through that weight room at all times. So even though we're using physical distancing, which is what's being suggested in any guidelines from the NCAA or the National Strength and Conditioning Association, taking this information about this being a lung disorder to another level. I actually talked with our orthopedic surgeon today, Dr. Clark, who's our team doctor, and explained this. He loved this idea of these barn fans, and he's like, you know, it's going to very much minimize the risk because those particles won't hang around. They won't stay in the air because there'll be such a heavy flow of air through the room. So it's gonna make a much safer room to be able to exercise in.
Dr. Smolenov, Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's nothing really new about this, and there are many tips that we have in our book that relate to minimization of the risk and utilization of many facility features are important. We look at we don't know for sure, but we can use quite a lot of research findings that are coming out now that might not be 100% true. But there is if it is true that the virus might be dying in high humidity and perhaps in high temperatures, then steam rooms might be good to utilize for that. If the sun is killing the virus, also bringing training to the maximum number of hours in fresh air on the sun as much as it's safe for from UV point of view for participants. Putting equipment and clothes and all your everywhere where virus could be on the sun and stimulation of the sun. There are different types of lamps with arrays that have been used to kill different infections that can be also used to minimize the risk. So there are a lot of current facility features that have been used for health that should be utilized more. If chlorine kills it, then the chlorine. If we can utilize swimming pools a lot more, particularly outdoor swimming pools that are in North America. So many outdoor swimming pools are closed for cold for the winter and used inefficiently. That could be a very good stimulation to think about more strategic and efficient way of using swimming pools in North America and across the world, so that they're used more, if not all around the world, and most of not around the year, but most of the months of the year too. If we put chemicals that are killing this virus and many other infections, and chlorine and different types of salt do this anyway now. Open outdoor swimming pools are the healthiest, and there is fundamental research that has been done that indicates that people who swim in outdoor swimming pools live longer and are healthier. We should use the current stress of coronavirus to advance and to prepare for all possible future situations like this. So these we outline many of these points in the book, and both on the facilities side, but also on micro level personal training side. So did you want to ask?
Yeah, we kind of wanted to discuss that because you guys, like in the book, you guys talk about dietary things that are in the fringe that would be beneficial for the athlete, not only from the diet but also supplement, if you want to call it supplementary, but exogenous substances, maybe like adaptogenics, things like this. I know that those will play a role because they can be protective for the athlete, but they're also simultaneously protective of the immune system and things of this nature as well. I mean, they really go hand in hand. And so the application isn't very far-fetched at all. Could you talk about like how those, for the athlete and just the regular average person, how those would affect them?
Well, I think the most important lesson for an average person from high-performance sport is individualization on every level and on everyday practice. Individualized approach. We see that we didn't need to look everyone in their rooms. you need to isolate people who are old, and you need to isolate people who have health conditions with predisposition to with high risk. But with those who are healthy, you need to strengthen their immune system. You need to do what high performance athletes do. You mentioned training 2 times a day. The best schools in the Soviet Union, in China now, in current Russia, they provide periodized training and rest that is very individualized. It is tailored to your personal needs and physiological conditions. You train a little bit in the morning, then you study or work, then you train a little bit more second time, then again you study and work, then you have your third training. This is the most advanced periodization, or in other words, rotation of training and resting, so that you are restoring. You never exhaust your immune system. Your immune system stays strong and very well rested, very well refreshed, if you do have 3 practices a week. And for an average person, it could be a 5-minute activity. It could be 15-minute, walk, then 15-minute gymnastics, and then 15-minute some kind of play, so that you do what the high performance athletes do.
And you know what, Peter?
Run, jog, cycle, endurance in the morning, in the first session, for example. In the second session, you do more strength training, gymnastics, push-ups, pull-ups, and so forth. And then towards the end, you do more stretching, and you play games that train your coordination and your and keep you more alert. So you 3 times a week, trying to be active 3 times a week. For high performance athletes, it could be like we train a little bit before breakfast, then breakfast, then 2 hours of real running, 2 hours of shooting, 2 hours of swimming, then you have dinner, then 2 hours of fencing, 2 hours of horseback riding, and then you do a little bit of swimming again. So three huge sessions a day, three sessions that are several hours. But for an ordinary person, their doctor must tell them you should do 5 minutes a day, or 15 minutes. 15 minutes a session. But try to do it 3 times a day, before your breakfast, before your lunch, and before your dinner. Deserve your meal, deserve your food by doing physical, mental work. Yes, so these are the fundamentals, and fundamentals that are still fringe for overwhelming majority of the population, right? It is fringe for most people. And also endurance, aerobic/endurance, strength, flexibility, and coordination. These are the key components that high performance athletes trying to include in everyday routine. So again, for ordinary person, this is fringe, but this is perhaps the most important fundamental practice that they should borrow from high performance athletes to keep their immune system stimulated and ventilated. A lot of running, a lot of cycling, a lot of possibly swimming, some strength, stretching, and then playing all types of ball games and other activities that require complex coordination of your body. Jed.
This is exactly the meeting I had with our volleyball team last night on Zoom. I went over the next 3 weeks of their training, which, you know, it incorporates the strength training, the conditioning training, flexibility training, and they're training every single day or 6 days a week. But then on top of that, I explained to them they have to add, and I gave them a series of suggestions, either the cycling, and the more they can do this outside, the better. Everything should be done outside. If they can do all of this outside, they're going to be much more healthy. Multiple sessions a day. So looking at, if you're training in the mid-morning, in the afternoon, they need to train again. And what could this consist of? Biking, running, you know, yoga outside, badminton, you know, playing tennis, things like this, where they're outside, swimming. If they can get outdoors swimming, that would be great if the weather warms up enough for them. But rollerblading, anything where they're doing extra exercise on top of what I'm prescribing, they need to prescribe their own. Again, for the lung health, the cardiovascular system needs to be taxed. And I gave them guidelines and parameters of what they can choose, but they have their own freedoms, but they need to do this, and it needs to be outside. Again, the UV rays, it's just so healthy for their lung health. And we're going to have them back here in a few weeks, and they're all going to be back together, but they need to stay very healthy.
So, you know, in that vein, what you were talking about, two things that also are important here, and like what you alluded to, Peter, with the idea of the activity supporting the immune system, and also supporting the psyche of the athlete as well. So, you know, an athlete especially is just chomping at the bit to be able to go participate in the sport and or train. You know, this is at the collegiate level. It's an enormous part of their life, and has been for a long time. So their psyche is affected by this. And one thing, I don't think this is a new study. It's been out a while, where they showed that exercise, just regular exercise, was more effective at combating depression than antidepressant medications, ironically. And you know, we've seen, you know, they've had a lot more, I don't want to say an upsurge in suicides, but you've seen some people have actually committed suicide during this process. And they said they've had many more calls to the suicide hotlines, counseling hotlines during this time. People are really depressed. And I think part of it is, you know, if someone loses their job and their ability to make income, that's, you know, that's a big blow. But I think under the undercurrent there too is the lack of activity. You know, for 8 weeks, if you're getting really minimal activity, you don't even realize what's going on, but your mood is starting to really become, you know, worse. Could you talk about that? You kind of alluded to it in the beginning, Jed. Can you guys talk about, you know, not only for the general, for the athlete, but the general population as well, how this plays into the picture?
Yeah, and I'll start it a little bit here, but yeah, these are sessions I was having with the athletes on Zoom and teaching them really essentially what we have in our book. So teaching them on diaphragmatic breathing for relaxation, to set themselves up for proper visualization, using progressive muscle relaxation. Again, trying to teach them to relax their body so that, first of all, is a great stress relief, but secondly, to set them up for more vivid visualization and concentration. So all this is laid out in the book. And then before I got into the visualization, I just worked with them on, and these are old tactics. Mindfulness comes from Asian methodologies and just meditation. And so teaching them how to think about not thinking, to be able to not think, which is a very difficult thing for people to do. How do you go through your day and train yourself to not think about anything, which for an athlete, in order to be in what we call the zone and flow, when athletes are in flow, they're not worried about things. They're not thinking about certain things. They're reacting. How do we train an athlete to become reactive? So we become automatic. Obviously, our training comes first, and they need to master their craft over and over again. We talked about the principle of consistency. If they have all the training in, they should be able to compete without thinking and be reactive. Our brain gets in the way. So what we end up doing is something someone said, what a coach said, what another somebody I'm competing against said. Someone in the audience that I am noticing that I shouldn't notice. I need to be able to have my mind clear. Well, ancient mindfulness practice helps train an athlete or anyone to be able to let things just flow off of them. So they just react. So teaching them how to properly do this, and they can practice every single day. This is something on top of the physical training. And then after I went over that, we got into a little bit deeper into then now how do we work on visualization to make things more vivid in our mind so we can practice our craft in our mind. Not only that, then moving on to hypnosis and self-hypnosis methods, very powerful, again, which we discuss in our book. These are things that we've been going over the last 6 weeks with our athletes because we actually have had time. They're on their own for the physical training. I can only meet with them on Zoom on the mental side. We can't do anything physical. So I've taken advantage of that. So I've set up sessions to teach, again, those fringe methodologies we discuss in the book, and they can actually practice those. So it's actually been a benefit in those regards because we never slow down enough as coaches. They come in, it's all physical, boom, 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 boom. And this allowed us to get into those topics within the book. And hey, let's practice this. You have time. So I'll kind of leave it there and I'll let Peter expand on that. But that gives you a little idea.
I think for everybody, it is important to look at what high-performance athletes are doing, how, in a simple way, they connect physical and mental. And one of probably the most kind of visible, simple thing is using voice. You can see how tennis players and combat competitors scream and they use various sounds in order to when they hit the ball or when they punch, they scream and use different but very specific noise or very specific tones or sounds. And fencers, tennis players, again, combat, all type of combat sports, taekwondo, karate,
to focus the energy.
It achieves on physical level. It achieves greater flow of oxygen into your blood, and but on mental level, you achieve higher level of concentration. There is enough of scientific experiments that confirm that you have greater level of concentration and focus when you do this, when you know how to scream properly. So for everybody else in the world, feel free to scream at your at anybody who annoys you. That's a good start. Try to sing and then you can read about specific voice exercises that you can do that should be integrated into your physical training in order to in our case, it is particularly important because we're talking about lungs and proper breathing and proper using of voice. All types of stimulating, lung stimulating and breathing stimulating exercises should be integrated. Again, for physical reasons, but also for your for better mental conditioning. Yes, we simple things that we are putting in a new volume. We're researching now how to use very simple nose breathing and try to minimize breathing through the mouth, maximize breathing through the nose. That could be a useful practice in our situation where we're trying to maximize the use of all types of filters when we inhale, and the nose provides. Our nose is a filter, so that breathing through the nose as much as possible could be one fringe method that for everybody it's anybody can try to try and run and do intense exercise, but try to keep your mouth closed, breathe through the nose. The nose is going to provide you with cleaner air that goes into your lungs. And also we know that for several hours this virus, this coronavirus, is going to stay in your upper respiratory system before it goes into the lungs. So if you keep it there and keep it ventilated, cleaned, you might have greater chance of avoiding this infection going into your lungs. So these are some of the tips for everybody.
Yeah, and this is in the book. I've got the obviously, for those who haven't seen it, I've got the book here in front of me. You guys go into some of the breathing techniques with as it related to Wim Hof, who's gotten some renown now, and then and like what you were talking about with the nasal breathing, I think it's called the Buteyko method. The author from Russia, who had developed ideas there that were very effective, and I think they're mainly getting articulated from Ian McKeown, I think from the UK. He wrote a book called Oxygen Advantage as well. And so those are ideas there. I think that was what you were alluding to, Dr. Smolyanov, with some of the ideas that he had brought about. Now, one other thing that's really critical, and it's gotten more attention in the last year, I think, and I don't know to what degree you guys had already discussed this before, but in the last year or so, there's been a lot more books on sleep. And the big one, Why We Sleep, is kind of one that got a lot of attention and talked about a lot of different of the collateral damage that comes from lack of sleep. Now, something that's interesting with this particular virus is that if you're not working, let's say you're an athlete, you're not in school, you don't have a job, you're sitting in the house, probably with today's college student, you're probably playing video games if you're a guy. With the girls, I'm not sure exactly what they're doing, but your sleep schedule could really get off. And the circadian rhythm is an important factor. So two things I think that we want to look at is, number one, circadian rhythm. Are you going to sleep, starting here, ending here, and not all over the place, like staying up all night, sleeping all day, and, getting your rhythm off? And then also, are you getting, if you are sick or you do get sick, the value of sleep is hard to even articulate. I mean, it's enormous if you do become ill. Trying to cut your sleep there would not be wise. Can you talk about that? Because I think this is something that probably maybe it seems obvious, but not. But it is a factor though.
Everybody knows that you should sleep. You need around 8 hours of sleep. Try. You need to try and get. It's personal. It's personal, plus minus, but you need this. There are a lot of tricks that high performance athletes use to have better sleep. And if you don't get enough sleep, what is more important? If you don't get enough sleep, what do you do? Because you're stressed to do work that might be late at night. What do? How do you fall asleep? And how do you get up then without getting groggy and falling asleep at night again? Well, and for this, one tip is you train again after hard training and after a good meal. You're more likely to fall asleep. Well, you might try to do what many athletes do in fencing and other sports. Have a bit of coffee before you fall for a nap, so that while you're sleeping for 15-20 minutes, caffeine starts to kick in and it wakes you up fresh. And you're productive, and you don't feel.
It's a great idea.
And then so these are the tricks that we're going to put in the new volume if they're not in the current book. Swimming is an excellent sleep aid. Hot rooms, sauna, steam room. Hammam are before you jump in the pool. Almost anybody can go for 5 minutes into hot room, and if you swim after, that is gonna help you sleep a lot. Jed, any tips?
Yeah, no, I think again. I've used the coffee trick, which is beneficial too. If napping is very important for athletes, for high performance athletes, to be able to put in a nap in the middle of the day to recharge. And a good idea is before that nap, use some of the relaxation methods that we went over. Again, the diaphragmatic breathing can relax, the progressive muscle relaxation. Try to use a little mindfulness. Drink coffee. You want 15-20 minutes. Boom, in 20 minutes you're good to go. It'll aid you for the second half of your day and the next workout. Then use the recovery methods. Again, sauna. You can do a pool, hot shower, and then relax again, get some good sleep for the night. I want to jump a little bit backwards in the podcast to talking about nutrition and supplementation a little bit, Yosef, because I think that is important, especially during COVID-19. Your calories are your energy, making sure that you are fueled properly throughout your day to help your immune system stay high with multiple exercise bouts, which we're recommending, multiple exercise bouts, making sure that the micronutrients are taken care of. It's best with natural food sources. Eat as much fruits and vegetables as you can. I think that's very important to get those micronutrients. Especially during this time, the macronutrients, obviously good calories coming in, but those micronutrients I think are very important. Again, keeping up the immune system. So the fresh fruits and vegetables, the more, it's not going to hurt you. It's a good way to help, again, keep the immune system up. And then carbohydrates that are clean to keep your good energy. The cleaner you can have your carbohydrates, multigrains, very good, very important. These are things that I think high performance athletes need to be focusing on to keep their energy levels and to keep the immune system high. I'll let Dr. Smolyanov comment on this as well.
Yeah, it's definitely the time to forget about losing weight.
Yeah.
I think right now it's better to use a diet that has high energy, more fat. Use meats and other high energy foods, but you can also try and experiment with those bioactive substances that traditionally have been used to strengthen the immune system. The simplest one is a mixture of garlic, lemon, and honey, and just put it in a mixer and put it as a sauce on your meat, or as a dessert sauce that is sweet. You can try to use ginger quite a lot in all possible ways. You can use eleuthero that we mentioned in the book. That's been tried and time validated. Eleuthero and ginseng, that there is American ginseng that is available. You can try and experiment with and see how these substances help you. Echinacea purpurea, Echinacea purpurea is probably one of the most widely known immune strengthening substance. Teas are sold all over the world, but perhaps Mumio and Eleuthero are less known in the West, more used in the East. We also mention other bioactive substances in our book, in our next volume, that we are validating as as immunostrengthening, but we need to also kind of separate them into more like antibacterial, anti-infection, and anti-inflammatory as most important subset. Say anti-infection. Garlic is probably the most has the widest spectrum of anti-infection qualities. And if you haven't been using yogurt every day, then or kefir is on the list now. It's a cousin of yogurt. Make sure that the bacteria that's there, the bioactive substances are put there after pasteurization. So there are quite a lot of tricks and kind of nuances that we are mentioning in the book, and will be mentioning, to make sure that what you eat is the true aid, and not a gimmick. Again, we all know about Jewish penicillin, about the chicken soup, but also how it's cooked. If it's in a metal can, that could be
Nothing.
Not valuable.
Nothing, or even make it worse, more harmful for your body than the freshly prepared soup. But soups, I'd say what is not used enough in the West are, first of all, soups. Soups are almost here in their variety, but still there are still quite a number of soups that are very important for your immune system and for your performance, that still are not available to everyone. Okay, so watch for those. You can investigate which ones and try those. So soups. Another thing is fermented foods, because if you look at cabbage is very important to eat.
Kimchi is awesome. Kimchi.
Yeah, Chinese again, Korean style fermented foods are very important to try, because they're not used enough in the West yet, but they're almost there in the stores. And we need to realize that some of the fresh vegetables and fresh product that is fermented, such as cabbage, is gaining qualities, unique qualities. And very simple fermented cabbage has the some of the highest vitamin C rich foods. Whatever, if you say vitamin C is important for immune system, number one is your cabbage, but particularly fermented cabbage, salted cabbage, vinegared cabbage, that's brewed there and produced qualities that are invaluable for your for immune system, and has vitamin C as perhaps one of the most important vitamins that you need to take more in the stressful situations like we are now, to prevent illnesses like this. Jet?
Yeah, I think that's undervalued, the fermented foods, and you hear this a lot, you know, in the naturopathic area: sauerkraut, kimchi, kombucha, kefir, yogurt. Really important for the bacteria health of the gut, the good bacteria, if you will. So those are.
And we know that this coronavirus that is, if it gets to the stomach, passes through the lungs, gets in the stomach the stomach acid should be able to kill it.
Yeah.
If
Right.
you have healthy digestion system,
yeah,
it should kill the virus.
And a lot of times that can be the rate limiting factor too, where it's not healthy, and you know, so you have a different environment going on. I'd like to just piggyback onto what you mentioned earlier too, Dr. Smirnoff, about garlic. You know, it's funny. You know, I have a range of friends from former Soviet Union because of my business, and one of my good friends from Kiev, he says, you know, anytime he gets sick, he doesn't. No medicines, just garlic. He cooks the garlic, maybe in some milk, and drinks the milk. And he said the next day I wake up and I'm good. One thing that I think is an important point for people here with garlic or any of the other ones, if garlic is antiviral, antimicrobial, antibacterial, it has a lot of different effects. But what's interesting, I think, and makes it valuable is that a lot of antibiotics are things that are in that space are single delivery and one dimensional. And so the different pathogens can mutate and change and become more powerful to work their way around it. The interesting thing about foods is that can't be done because the complexity of garlic doesn't allow for the pathogen to learn it, if you will, the chemical complexity. And so in some cases, things like garlic can be far more effective because it's harder for the pathogen to mutate with it. So I think that's an interesting thing there, you know, where, you know, allopathics, we look at, you know, antibiotics or drugs, but they're single delivery and they're only useful for a while. And then, you know, the body, you know, the pathogens can mutate.
So I want to have Peter, this one might be a good point to finish on here because we've been going about an hour, but with this garlic, Peter had an old concoction or remedy that he brought back up. I was sick a couple years ago maybe. I was talking to Peter on the phone, and he said this is something that is from the past, back in the Soviet Union with the athletes, that they would make the concoction, and he told me exactly how to make it, and I made it verbatim, exactly the way that Peter told me to make it. Potent, so much so my wife, she could hardly stand the smell of it because it was so potent. But maybe Peter tells the recipe. here at the end of this podcast, but it definitely helped build up my energy and help wipe out the virus I was fighting. But maybe this is a good point to end on. Peter's garlic, honey, lemon potion.
Yeah, but also you mentioned garlic and you mentioned Kiev. What Ukraine gives us is probably the most important, and now probably the most controversial recipe for fighting any infection like this, which is fresh pig fat. What you eat with garlic is fresh salted pig fat. They put salt on it and they keep it, and the salt penetrates it, and they keep it for sometimes for several months. And what you eat is not cooked, is not thermally affected. It's just fresh salted fat. It's against all the recently popular diets on how to lose weight, but I would say that forget about these diets, forget about them forever. But definitely now, if you get, I think it's very high energy, multi benefit cocktail that Ukrainians have been using for hundreds of years, and that's where I think it might be originating there, but it's definitely their national food. It's highly recommended for this particular virus, because I'm not going to give you a lecture on this, but I think that's what you should try. And also, when there is another very, very simple recipe that worked when you just start to feel a bit weak, and you're not sick yet, but it's coming. Onion with whatever food you eat, the whole onion, and then maybe another one. So if you eat 2 onions, there is high chance that the bacterial anti-infection qualities of onion are going to kill. Again, it's not guaranteed, but it's been used by many coaches with their athletes as a healing, as natural medicine.
Yeah.
Food is medicine. Yeah. Garlic and onion, perhaps the number ones. And the last
works
one
for vampires.
Yes. No one is going to sit next to you in the airplane. It's going to protect you from
social distancing.
Social distancing.
Yeah, it's going to help you with social distancing. Sorry, it's not very polite, but as long as it works, it's another help. So, but also what we need to, I think, to do more of as sport nutritionists and coaches should do more of is the combination. When we say meat with cabbage and with papaya to break down, to absorb fats better, to get fat into energy quicker. What foods should go together is something that is important now, so that the high energy and higher fat diet that you have is not going to make you fat, but it's going to make you more energetic, and it's going to make your immune system better. So the fat that you eat is digested and goes into your energy and strengthen your immune system. For this, we need to help the digestive system with cross-promoting qualities when we eat. And soup is perhaps one of the most vivid examples of this when you have hot liquid or warm liquid helping the fat that is in the soup to be digested better and absorbed better by your digestive system.
Yeah, that's a lot of really that's a lot of good stuff, and I think these are things that you know, would be considered fringe, especially in the United States, not as well known. But it's funny that like when you brought some of that up, that you know, different people that I known from the former Soviet Union, we'd had this discussion before, and you know, I'd used it myself. You know, when the kids are sick, or you know, use them as remedies, and I'll share one quick anecdote because I think you both could appreciate this. When my oldest son's in his late 20s now, but when he was about 3 or 4 years old, he had several earaches, ear infections in a row. And, you know, they normally just prescribe antibiotics. So somewhere in there, I asked, you know, a friend of mine who works in naturopathic medicine, and he recommended mullein garlic oil. So the mullein flower and the garlic oil in there, and just put it in the ear. So we did that. We gave it to him that day. It was in the middle of the day. By that evening, he was feeling better. By the next day, he was back to normal. And here's what's interesting. He never got another ear infection in his life since then. So, and that was kind of what I was alluding to earlier about, you know, it's harder for those bacteria or viruses to mutate around something that's as complex as garlic. It can't figure it out. But a single delivery drug, it'll figure out. You know, you can only use an antibiotic so many times, and then the body, you know, the pathogen works around it. But with natural things like garlic, it's very difficult because of its chemical complexity. So I thought it was funny that you brought that up, because I know firsthand. So then when my 2 younger boys got earaches or had an ear infection, we went right to it, worked. Hardly any ear infections in the life of all 3 boys because of that. But the normal protocol would be take them to the doctor, get an antibiotic, and eventually what ends up happening is a lot of kids end up having surgery, getting tubes or, you know, whatever. And we never went through that because of garlic. And so it was kind of it's interesting that you brought that up in this conversation, because I know firsthand the value of garlic. It's unbelievable, really. But listen, guys, I know we went long today, but I really appreciate your time. This has been informative, I know, for everybody in all the different ways, kind of a special edition. We'll get back going through the book a little bit more next week, but this week, this was great to kind of highlight this. We'll get this out right away. So as people are starting to get back into their normal life over the next couple of weeks, you know, some guidelines or some new ideas maybe that they hadn't considered before. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Joseph. Yep.
Thanks, Joseph. Thank you, Jed. Yep. It was good to talk to you.
Yeah, great to talk to you guys. Bye-bye.